Thank you for joining us for Financial Aid and College Financing, a presentation sponsored by the Finance Authority of Maine. For more information about financial aid and the financial aid process, you can like us on Facebook at Fame Education. You can also join our mailing list at famemaine.com/join. This presentation follows along with our pay publication. You can find this publication and many more on our website at famemaine.com/publications. You can print the PDF, save to your computer, or we can mail a free copy of our publications directly to you. For this presentation, we're going to cover a variety of topics. We'll cover a financial aid overview. We'll go through the steps to the financial aid process, the types of financial aid you can expect to see in your financial aid packages. We'll talk a little bit about those financial aid notices that will go out to students. We'll cover reducing expenses, what happens when your financial aid just isn't enough. We'll talk saving for college, educational tax credits and deductions, and at the end we'll talk about some fantastic additional resources that are out there and available to you. So let's begin with a financial aid overview. Financial aid exists to help students pay for college. When we are talking about financial aid, we are talking about any money that a student gets to help them pay for college that is not coming directly out of their or their parents' pockets. So those types of aid usually fall into one of two categories, either need-based aid or merit-based aid. Need-based aid is determined when you fill out your financial aid forms. So the whole point of filling out these financial aid forms that we're going to talk about in this presentation is to figure out how much the federal government and the colleges feel that a family can afford to pay for college for their student. When they get that number, so filling out those forms will come up with a number called an expected family contribution, or an EFC. That number determines how much the federal government thinks the family can afford to pay for college. If a college costs more than the student's expected family contribution, then that student has a need. They need some money in order to pay for that college. So those students could be offered need-based aid. The other type of aid that you might see is merit-based aid. Merit-based aid is money a student gets to help them pay for college that they are getting for doing or being something special. So they usually have to earn this type of money in some way. So one of the most common types of merit aid that we see is academic merit aid. So good grades in high school can lead to some scholarship money for college based on those grades. But we see students get merit aid for other things as well. So at Division I and Division II schools, students can receive sports-related scholarships. That would be considered merit aid. You might get a scholarship because you are in a certain degree program at a college. That is merit aid. So again, any type of money that you've gotten for doing or being something special is considered merit aid. You want to understand why you are getting the money you are getting. Is it need-based aid or is it merit aid? So that you can understand how to hold on to that money from year to year. When it comes to merit-based aid, in order to keep getting that money from year to year, typically you need to keep doing that thing that earned you that money in the first place. So if you got it for getting good grades, you need to keep getting good grades. If you got it for playing a sport, you need to keep playing that sport. When it comes to need-based aid, all you need to do to keep getting that money from year to year is to keep being needy. So no big changes or upticks in family earnings and things like that. So those changes to families' finances can affect a student's need-based aid from year to year. We're going to spend a good amount of time in this presentation talking about the FAFSA. All schools use the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, to award all of their federal financial aid dollars. So we encourage every student heading off to college to fill out that FAFSA every year you plan to be a student. So even if you think you won't qualify for financial aid, it is still a good idea for students to complete that FAFSA because there are often other types of aid that depend on it, and you still want to be considered for scholarships that the college might offer, and certainly you want to have access to the eligibility for your federal student loans. Again, even if you don't plan to use them right away, things can happen. You might want to have that eligibility. So you want to fill out that FAFSA every year you go to college. So when we talk about the financial aid process, we like to break it down into 3 steps. And that first step is to get ready. So this is where students start looking for colleges, start finding colleges that they like, that have the academics that they want and the supports that they need. But as students find those colleges, they should also be researching college costs. So one of the best ways to do that is to take a look at a college's website and find their net price calculator. So every college in the United States has a net price calculator on their website. This tool allows you to put in information about the student and the family's financial situation. And then it's going to take that information and it's going to let you know what kinds of financial aid the college has available for that student or is likely to offer that student in that upcoming year. So don't focus on the sticker price. Sticker prices of colleges in Maine range anywhere from $5,000 a year to $75,000 a year. Some of those larger priced colleges may seem really intimidating until you do their net price calculator and discover that they tend to have more of the financial aid dollars to offer students. So use those net price calculators, take a look at those net price results, so how much the student is really going to need to pay for college, and start using those numbers to have conversations about college affordability, maybe about the types of financial resources a family has available to help that student pay for college, maybe what expectations are on the student, maybe summer jobs, saving for college, those kinds of things. So start having those conversations early on using those net price calculators. There's a great resource out there on the College Board's website called Big Future that will allow you to really look a little more closely at how colleges have offered financial aid to students in the past. So here's a screenshot of that Big Future website. Big Future allows you to search for colleges based on a bunch of different parameters, including how much you're going to have to pay or how generous a college's financial aid packages are. So we'd encourage you to use this website if you're trying to not only find a good fit school academically and socially, but also a good fit school financially. So it's a great tool for that. The other thing that this website has that we really like is that if you are missing or you can't find the link to the net price calculator on the college's website, Big Future has a direct link to each of those calculators. All you do is look up the college and the link will be right there on the page. So the next part in step 1 is to, while you're on that college's website, start researching deadlines and required forms. So most colleges have deadlines for their admissions applications and deadlines for financial aid applications. Sometimes these applications are the same date, but more often than not, they are different dates. So you want to kind of pay attention to when the college's deadlines are. When it comes to that financial aid filing deadline, that is typically the date that colleges give away most of their money. So you do not want to miss that deadline. You want to be in the queue to receive the financial aid that you need to help you pay for college. So visit the college's website, find out when their financial aid filing deadlines are, and start tracking that information. As you kind of find all those different schools that you're interested in, figure out what college has the earliest financial aid filing deadline. When you find that out, you know that that deadline is your financial aid filing deadline. So if that deadline is in December, then you know you need to absolutely get those financial aid forms in by that date in December so that you are getting everything into all of the colleges on time and are lining up for those financial aid dollars. Another thing that you're going to find on that college's website is what financial aid forms they want from you. Most colleges out there just want one form. It is the FAFSA, so the free application for federal student aid. And again, you're going to want to fill that out for every college so that you can at least be considered for federal financial aid, but that is also the form that most colleges use to award their own financial aid. But some colleges might want an additional financial aid form from you. They might have their own institutional form that you can print right off their website, or they could be asking for the CSS profile. The CSS profile is a form that was created by the College Board. You're going to find it at cssprofile.org. It is a bit more involved. It asks a whole lot more questions and gets a lot more intimate with your family's finances than the FAFSA. It is also not free. So the CSS profile has a cost. So you'll want to visit their website to learn more about the cost of filling out the form, what colleges require the form, and what they're going to be asking of you. So they have a great tutorial that you can watch. Many of the colleges asking for the CSS profile are going to want to know about custodial and non-custodial parent information. So that means in some cases you could have two households submitting information on that CSS profile application. Now, the nice thing to know is if you are in that scenario, so if a student comes from a split household where their biological or adoptive parents live in separate households, when you are filling out those CSS profiles, each family will log in separately to submit their information. So you won't see each other's information, but it does usually add an additional step for those families. So again, cssprofile.org has a lot more information when it comes to learning about the profile. Sometimes I have families who really worry about filling out that form, so they try to avoid colleges that are asking for it. I would encourage you not to do that because there are a few things those colleges have in common. Typically, colleges asking for the CSS profile tend to be highly selective colleges. So in Maine, Colby, Bates, and Bowdoin are our three colleges asking for that CSS profile. So they tend to be highly selective colleges with lots of money to give away. So these are also the colleges that can offer 100% of need or 90% or even 80%. So they tend to offer a whole lot more financial aid than some of those other colleges out there. So it is usually worth a family's time and investment to fill out that CSS profile. So again, visit cssprofile.org to learn more about that application form. Another thing you can do in getting ready is to save as much as possible. And guys, it is never too late to start saving for college. Every bit helps. Every dollar you save for college is a dollar you don't have to borrow. So start looking for those opportunities. Even small dollars amounts help. On the inside back cover of the pay publication, you'll find an advertisement for Next Gen. Next Gen is Maine's college savings plan. You can also find information on our website about the Next Gen program, and there are some really great saving opportunities and dollar matching opportunities from the state of Maine for Maine residents. You should also be applying for outside scholarships at this time, so looking for as many scholarships as you can. Page 8 in the book has a fantastic list of scholarship websites that we really like. You can also find those same lists on our website at famemaine.com. Again, scholarships are money that a student will get that helps them pay for college that they don't have to pay back. So you want as much of those as possible as you go through the process. So now let's talk about your FSA ID. Your FSA ID is the username and password you'll use to log into and sign your FAFSA form. Every student needs an ID, and for dependent students, at least one parent will also need an ID. Before you get started on creating your ID, we would highly suggest that you visit our website and download our FSA ID information tracking form. You can download it and print it and use it to write everything down as you go. And we've got lots of great hints and tips and tricks written down on that form to help you along. So you're going to get your ID at fsaid.ed.gov. And we suggest that you get your ID before you complete your FAFSA. So it's better to have that ready to go. It takes about 20 minutes per ID to create them. So if you are waiting until you file your FAFSA, it can add a lot of extra time to FAFSA completion. So Having it done ahead of time means that you're more prepared when it's time to complete your FAFSA. It also helps if maybe you've made a mistake in filling out your FSA ID application, you have time to go back in and correct it. And I mention this because when we are working with students and families who are struggling to complete their FAFSA, we are usually dealing with a student or a parent who has inaccurately created their FSA ID. So they've made a mistake when they created their ID. So we would highly encourage you to slow down while you create your IDs. Pay attention to what you are putting in the application and write everything down as you go along. You're going to need an email address in order to access your ID, in order to create an ID. We suggest that you do not use your school email account because shortly after you graduate, they are likely to shut off that email account and then you no longer have access to it and therefore could get easily locked out of your FSA ID and your FAFSA. So use a personal email address when you're creating your FSA ID. It's also going to ask for a cell phone number. Both the email address and the cell phone number that you choose to give in the FSA ID application need to be accessible while you are applying for the ID. So what's going to happen is when you give it your email address, it's going to send you an email to that email account that you need to go and then check, get a 6-digit number, and plug it back into the application. The same thing with the cell phone. It'll send you a text message. You need to get that 6-digit number, plug it back into the application, and you only have a few minutes to do that. So make sure when you are creating your ID, you are somewhere where you can access both that email address, that email account, and text messages from that cell phone while you're creating your ID. Again, slow down, write everything down as you go. You are going to use this ID every year you apply to college. So the second step in the financial aid process is to actually fill out your applications. So you can complete the free application for federal student aid at fafsa.gov. That's FAFSA.gov. So make sure it has the .gov at the end. The FAFSA is free. It has the word free right in the title of the application. So you should not need to pay anyone to submit this form for you. But you do need to remember that you are likely completing this every single year that a student goes to college. So this is what the homepage of the FAFSA looks like. Make sure that the page you're on looks just like this one. So now let's talk about your FAFSA application for 2021. So for students who plan to attend college sometime between fall of 2020 and summer of 2021. So that FAFSA form, the 2021 FAFSA, becomes available on October 1st of 2019. So you want to submit that form as early as possible after that date, typically avoiding those first couple days. So October 1 and October 2, lots of people are trying to get in there and fill it out, and it can be a little tough and slow. So, but anytime after that, I think is a great time to get on and start filling out your application. For that 2021 FAFSA, it is going to ask for your 2018 tax information, and it's going to give you the option to use the IRS data retrieval tool. So I talked earlier about some of the things that the federal government has done to make the FAFSA a whole lot easier, and this is one of them. So this IRS data retrieval tool really helps families get this FAFSA done easy and seamlessly. So they give you the option of using the IRS data retrieval tool, but truly it is not optional. You want to use this tool. Number one, because it makes things easier for you. Number two, because if you do not use it, you are much more likely to be selected for verification, which we'll talk about in just a minute, adding a bunch of steps to this process for you. And if you don't use IRS data retrieval, there's a pretty good chance that the colleges you're applying to are still going to make you do it anyways. So I would highly suggest you just do it the first time around. So click the button that takes you to the IRS data retrieval tool, verify that you are who you say you are, and then have all of your information from your 2018 tax form pulled directly into your FAFSA. All the right numbers put in all the right places for you. And then you can pat yourself on the back because you just did a whole lot of work with just a couple of strokes of the keypad. That said, there are a few people who might struggle with getting that IRS data retrieval done. If you find that you are one of those people, so it kind of keeps giving you an error message, we would suggest that you give us a phone call. So there are some tricks that we know at FAME that we've worked with families with that sometimes get in the way of seamlessly pulling that information in. So we'd love to help you out if you run into any trouble. So when you are filling out this form, it's important to remember that the application belongs to the student, even though it feels like they're going to ask for a lot of parent information on the form. But so remember that while it is, while you're in the FAFSA form, all of the questions, they are talking to the student. So they're speaking to the student like the student is filling out this form all on their own, even though we know a lot of times parents are helping out to complete this application. There are some students who won't need parent information on their FAFSA form. So there are a handful of, or maybe more than a handful of students that are independent students. So if you are over the age of 24, you will not need parent information on the FAFSA. If you are taking classes as a graduate student, so if you're working on your master's degree or your doctoral degree, then you will not need parent information on the FAFSA. If you are in legal guardianship of somebody other than your biological or adoptive parents, so if you are a ward of the state or if your grandparent has legal guardianship of you, in those cases, you will automatically be an independent student. And there are actually like 13 other things that can make you an independent student on the FAFSA. The FAFSA will walk you through all of those questions. So, you'll be able to see what they all are in case maybe one of them fits you. But the vast majority of students are going to be using their parents' information when they fill out their FAFSA form. So who is your parent on the FAFSA? If a student's biological or adoptive parents live in the same household, then you are going to use those parents' information on the FAFSA form as well as the students. But if biological or adoptive parents do not live in the same household, so they're divorced or they're separated or they were never married and they live in separate households, then you are going to use the information for the parent that the student lived with most for the last 12 months. So at the date you're sitting down at the computer, you think back 12 months, where did that student live most? That's the parent you're going to use. That parent's information and that student's information will go inside the FAFSA form. If that parent is single, it'll be just that parent's information. And if the parent is married, you are going to use step parent information in the form, even if the step parent has no intention of helping pay for college. So the federal government has set up the FAFSA to work with the household information, the household that the student lives in most. Now, the piece that typically plays the largest role in determining a student's financial aid eligibility is usually, not always, but usually parent income. So the higher the parent income, the less financial aid a student qualifies for. The lower the parent income, the more financial aid the student qualifies for. So when we're talking about what plays the biggest role, it's usually parent income. That said, the FAFSA does ask for some other stuff as well. So they are going to ask for student income, but students can earn more than $6,000 a year, and the federal government is not even going to look at that first $6,000. So if a student, most high school seniors certainly are not making over $6,000 a year, but they're only looking at dollar amounts above that $6,000 for dependent students. So for most students, student income doesn't play a huge role in determining financial aid eligibility. The FAFSA also looks at assets. So when it comes to assets, student assets can be looked at pretty heavily. So typically, 20% of any dollar a student has in their name is going to be expected to be available to help them pay for college. So it's never a great idea for students to have large dollar amounts in their name. That said, $1,000, a couple $1,000 is usually not a huge deal, is not going to make a big dent in the process. For parents, however, assets are looked at in a much smaller way. So I find a lot of times families worry a lot about parent assets when in reality, they often play a pretty small role in the process, and here is why. First, there are 3 types of assets that neither student or parent will ever enter into the FAFSA application. The first one is the value of the home you live in, your primary residence. That value does not go into the FAFSA at all. So you're not going to tell them how much the house is worth. You're also not going to tell them what you're paying for a mortgage, not on the FAFSA form. So they don't want you selling your house to pay for your student to go to college. They're also not going to ask about qualified retirement accounts, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, pension plans. None of those values will go into the FAFSA under assets. They don't want you draining your retirement accounts to pay for your student to go to college. And lastly, if you own a small business, those small business assets are protected. So you won't need to put any of those assets in either. So what do you put in as assets? So you're going to put in bank accounts, checking and savings accounts, mutual accounts, mutual funds. So those things that you might have access to on a regular basis, those things, cash that you've shoved in your mattress. So cash on hand, you're going to include all of those under the cash section. Then the next one is investments. So they want to know if you have stocks and bonds or investment properties that you would include there. So if you own a second home or a camp or a rental property, you will need to put the equity value of that property into the FAFSA. And lastly, if you own a large business, so you employ more than 100 people, or maybe you only own a portion of a small business, you will potentially have to put in some of those business assets. So there's lots of information right on the FAFSA about how to figure out what those assets are and how to put them into your form. Or you can give us a call at FAME and we'll help you figure that out as well. But even after you've added up all those things, so bank accounts, maybe a rental property, cash on hand, you add up all those dollar amounts, every family still has an asset protection allowance. It's an amount of money you can even show the federal government that you do have, and they're still not going to look at it. That number is based off of the age of the oldest parent in the household. So here's where being an older parent comes in really handy. So there'll already be a portion of those assets that you do show them that they're not going to look at. And then even if you still have assets that they are looking at, the maximum that they will look at those assets is that 5.6% of them would be available to help your student pay for college. But that only happens if you are already in one of the highest earning tax brackets. So the higher your income, the higher percentage that they will look at those additional assets. The lower your income, the lower the percentage is that they will look at those assets. So again, parent income typically is the piece that plays the biggest role in this process. If you have any questions about that, or are just curious about how it works, again, use those net price calculators on colleges' websites. You can increase and decrease household income, or increase or decrease household assets, and see how that might affect a financial aid package that a college is offering you. Once you've completed your FAFSA and you get to the end of the form, it's going to give you kind of a confirmation page that'll look something like this. We do just want to point out that it does have this option. Does your brother or sister need to complete the FAFSA? If a parent is filling out this FAFSA form for multiple students, this is a good thing to remember. If you just kind of click on this box, it will open up a new FAFSA for you. The second student will log in with their FSA ID and answer questions about themselves. And then when you get to the parent section, it'll be already pre-populated for you. So it will remember all of your information and make this process a whole lot easier. So that's a great little tip to keep in mind if you have multiple children going to college at the same time filling out that FAFSA form. So I encourage you to fill out that FAFSA as early as possible, and this is why. So that FAFSA becomes available on October 1st. So in this scenario, I've got the same student going to the same college, just filling out their financial aid forms on different days. So in that first scenario, the student submitted on October 1st. And I will tell you, I did say earlier, don't submit on October 1st. So this could have been submitting on October 3 or 4 or 8 or 12, and we would have had the same scenario as long as you meet that college's financial aid filing deadline. In the first scenario, that student gets everything in on time and is getting more than $20,000 in financial aid. In the second scenario, same student going to the same college fills out the form after that deadline has passed. So let's say this college had a deadline of January 15th, and this family didn't fill out the form until January 18th. Now we've got a financial aid package that's reduced by about $7,000. And if you take a look at what's missing, it's all of the, kind of the free money, the money that the college has at its disposal to give away. So your SEOG grant and your university grant. So those are things that you really want to have access to if at all possible. So fill out this application on time. The last scenario is a student who waits until the end of senior year to fill this out, and you'll see they're out even more money. So meet those deadlines, folks. Getting the FAFSA form done in the month of October is the best way to go. A few days after you complete your FAFSA, you are going to get an email letting you know that the FAFSA has been processed, and you're going to be able to go back into the FAFSA and look at your student aid report. Your student aid report is a list of all the questions on your FAFSA application and all of the answers you gave. You just want to look it over, make sure everything looks right. If you made a mistake, now is the time to get back in and correct it. But this is going to give you that opportunity to see everything. And there's lots of other great information on this, the student aid report as well. So definitely check that out as soon as you get a chance. So one of the things that your student aid report can give you a heads up on is verification. So verification is a process where the federal government and colleges check our work and keep us honest. So students are most often randomly selected for verification, although sometimes a college may just verify all of their incoming freshmen. But if you use the IRS data retrieval tool when you're filling out the FAFSA, we have seen that greatly reduces the chances of you being selected for verification. Also, for some families who might choose not to file a tax return, maybe because they didn't have to, we would encourage them on the years that they have students heading off to college that they fill in those, that file their tax returns every year, even though they might not have to do so. So those things can help so that you will not be selected for verification. But if you are selected for verification, the colleges will communicate with you. So they will let you know. It's just the challenge we have is how will they let you know? Some colleges will mail home a letter, and you can open the letter and talk about it. Students and parents can talk together about how to meet, what the college is asking for. But more often than not now, we are seeing colleges send emails or put information in the student's online portal. So it's important early on when you're applying to these colleges and kind of building your kind of list of everything that you are asking the college ahead of time. How are you going to communicate with me going forward about admissions information, but certainly also about financial aid information? How can I expect to get that correspondence? So know how they're going to communicate with you and be checking those forms of communications on a weekly basis. So we know students today are checking email less and less. This is a time when they really want to get back on that habit. So find out if you were selected for verification. So certainly you can get a heads up in the student aid report, but then once you get information that starts to come from the colleges, you want to be opening that stuff immediately and responding to that. So meet those verification deadlines, just like they were admissions or financial aid filing deadline. The whole point of filling out this financial aid form or doing any of these forms and putting all this information in is to get your EFC, your expected family contribution. Your EFC is a measurement of your family's financial ability to pay for college. So they're going to look at all of the information you provide, and based on their equation, they're going to determine what they think is a realistic number for you to pay, whether or not you agree with that number. So we'll just say that as well. We see expected family contribution numbers certainly as low as 0, and 0 is the most common number we see in the state of Maine. But we also see numbers pretty commonly that are in the, the teens, so 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, or higher. So when you get that expected family contribution, know that it's not necessarily what you are going to pay, however. So every college gets that number and they use it in their equation to build the financial aid package for the student. So it is not necessarily how much the family will have to pay, because in some scenarios, you have a college where if your expected family contribution is $7,000, but it doesn't cost that much to go to that college, well, obviously you're never going to feel like you had to come up with that much. But we also see it at if your expected family contribution is low, so maybe $1,000, that you might never feel like you had to come up with that either, because the federal Pell Grant system and the Maine State Grant will cover, some of those costs in different ways for you that make you feel like you didn't have to come up with it. In some scenarios, like if you were going to go to a school that meets 100% of need, then you might feel like you got exactly what you needed. So if you could, your expected family contribution is $1,000 and that school costs $70,000, they might offer you $69,000 in financial aid and you feel like you're in a pretty good spot. That would be great. But the vast majority of schools are gapping students, which means you get your expected family contribution and it's, $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, and the college expects you to pay more than that. So you end up paying, $3,000 more or $5,000 more or $20,000 more. So every school has different kinds of money they can offer students, and they choose to offer it in different ways. So you may absolutely find that you have schools that do not meet your need, and your expected family contribution, and you're actually having to come up with a lot more than that. So it's just good to know that it's a number that the colleges use, but the best way to really know what you're going to get for financial aid is to do your net price calculators. So there are a few different types of financial aid we're going to talk about tonight. One of them is scholarships and grants, and that is your money that you don't have to pay back. You want as much of this as possible. You can get scholarships and grants, or certainly you can get grants from the federal government and from the state of Maine, and you can get scholarships and grants from the colleges themselves, and certainly outside institutions or private entities who might offer scholarships and things like that. So all of those scholarships and grants are money that you can apply directly to the bill for college and that you are not going to have to pay back. Work study is a little bit different. So again, you're going to see those. You could potentially see work study in your award notification. That is a job on your college campus or affiliated with your college. You work the job and they pay you. Sounds great, right? And for a lot of students, it really is great. So we know there are lots of studies that show that students who have work study jobs on campus are connecting with their campuses in different ways that allow them to have more connections to navigate school. So maybe they're an incoming freshman and they work in the cafeteria and they're cleaning trays, but they're cleaning trays next to a senior who has taken classes here for 4 years now, and they really have a better understanding of how the college works and some of the things that might be good for students to know, which teachers grade in certain ways or have certain types of expectations that might fit best with how your student learns. So having those connections early on is a great thing. One of the challenges with work study is it is awarded to you in your award package like it is going to pay for college. But for most students, this money doesn't come to them fast enough to pay the fall bill. So the fall bill, the first bill for college, is usually due sometime in early August, late July. And your first work study check, you have to get to college, get to campus, find a job, work the job, then you get paid. So it's like end of September, beginning of October before you get that first check. So work study money is typically, for most students, spending money on campus. Now, it is possible to save that money and use it to pay for the next bill, or to set up a payment plan with the college, and we'll talk more about that in just a bit. But know that for most students, this isn't going to be money that is readily available to pay for the bill when that first bill is due. The last type of aid we're going to talk about that you might see in your award offer are student loans. Most students are going to see a federal direct student loan in their award offer. This is a loan directly from the federal government to the student. It does not require a cosigner. It does not require a credit check. There are also some additional benefits that come with a federal student loan. One of them is the federal government does a pretty good job trying to keep that interest rate low for borrowers. And when it comes time to repay that student loan, the federal government has 20 different repayment options that you could use in order to pay back that loan, including income-based repayment. And if you do end up in a kind of a really tough spot, there are options for deferment, which would give you a little bit of a break in making payments or potentially paying a smaller amount every month. These things can help students kind of get through hardships they might have, maybe when they're first starting out and don't have as much income. So when it comes to taking out student loans for college, we suggest that students begin with that federal direct student loan. It's also possible that a student could be offered a portion of that loan subsidized. That means that the federal government will not charge the students interest on that student loan or that portion of the student loan while they are in college. So those are all great things that can really help students when it comes to borrowing. It's possible you might also see an institutional loan in your award offer. That is a loan directly from the college to the student. There are not a lot of those out there, but for the most part, they work similarly to private loans. So it's important to understand how your loans will work. Certainly, if you can avoid taking out loans, we'd suggest you do that. But we know that a lot of students are going to need to take out loans in order to afford college. So do your research, spend a little bit of time kind of understanding how all these loans work and finding one that works best for you. So theloanforme.com is a website that we have created at Fame that will allow you to kind of ask yourself some questions before you borrow student loan money. So it's worth checking that out. So you're likely to start seeing these aid offers coming from financial aid offices you could see some as early as December, but most of them we are seeing in February and even into March. So it takes colleges a while to process all of the information that they're getting. They also have to wait for some information from the federal government. So know that if you're getting one of these aid offers early, like December, it's possible things could change a little bit inside that aid offer. But the big thing to know is that colleges are going to start communicating this information to students. So it's important that students understand how the college is going to communicate with them. So asking those questions up front. Are you going to be sending me an email? Are you going to be using my personal email account? Are you going to use the email account that the college created for me? Are you going to send the information to my student information system account? So you want to know, how is the college going to communicate with you? You are not going to see an aid offer until you have been formally accepted at that college. So make sure that you've followed through on all of the parts for admission as well. Once you get that aid offer, you want to be kind of reading it through, making sure you understand all the types of aid you have been offered, and call if you have any questions. So ask those schools, compare side by side the aid that you've been offered. On page 16 in Pay, we have a worksheet you can use to do those side-by-side comparisons. I'd encourage you to use this worksheet to compare side-by-side the award notifications you get from colleges, but also you can use these to compare side-by-side the net price calculator results that you are seeing. So this tool allows you to really see who's got the best net price. At the end of the day, who's giving you the best deal. So this is a really great tool to use, but there are lots of other tools out there as well. So finaid.org has an advanced award offer comparison tool. There are some apps out there. The College Board has some apps that are also easy to use. So make sure you're comparing those award letters, award notifications side by side. Once you've made your decision about what college you plan to attend, it's important to respond to those colleges and follow through with the necessary next steps that might be required for different kinds of financial aid. So once you have decided where you want to go, you want to let that college know that you're coming and accept your award package. If you've decided not to go to a certain college, you want to let them know that you're not coming so that they can then release those financial aid funds that they had awarded to you, potentially award them to somebody else. So you want to make those notifications. You also want to take a good look at that college where you're planning to attend and see if there are any additional steps in the financial aid process. So in the process of getting that financial aid, if you plan to accept your federal student loan, you're going to need to do entrance counseling and sign a promissory note. So you want to make sure you follow up with that. Sometimes there are also scholarships that you are awarded that have an additional step. One thing I've seen in the past is a scholarship that requires you to write a thank you letter. So read those award notifications, make sure that you understand the next steps and follow through with those. Also, if you win an outside scholarship, you do want to let your college know as soon as possible. So colleges do take into consideration the financial aid that you are awarded by outside bodies. So maybe it's your high school that awarded you a scholarship or your local Rotary Club. So what happens is colleges have a formula on how they award financial aid, and they are going to plug usually outside scholarships into that formula. So it could absolutely affect the financial aid you receive from that college. However, you do have some discretion to ask questions and request that you could always ask the college to maybe eliminate your work study instead of eliminating a grant or scholarship that they offered you if they need to make an adjustment. But the earlier you can have those conversations about outside scholarships, the sooner they would make adjustments if they decided they were going to do that, and the more time you have to react and respond to them. So again, as soon as you know about outside scholarships, you want to reach out to those colleges and communicate. When you're filling out these financial aid forms, the information that you are putting in is usually from a moment in time. And then by the time students get onto these college campuses, the information that's been put inside their financial aid form, so the information the colleges are considering when building your award package, is based on information that could be up to 2 years old. Things change. If you feel like your family's financial situation has deteriorated in any way, you want to reach out to your college and let them know that you have a special circumstance, or ask them if they think you have a special circumstance. So some of the most common things we see is families who've experienced unemployment, divorce or separation, any other loss of income, or even unusual medical expenses. So if you think your family has medical expenses that might be higher than the average family, those are things you want to communicate to the college. And if a parent is attending college, at least part-time, and certainly if a parent is attending full-time, you want to let those colleges, that college know as well, because when they are determining when the FAFSA determines how many people are going to college in a household, they don't count the parents. So if a parent is in fact going to college, a college might take that into consideration. So communicate with those colleges. If your family's financial situation has deteriorated at all, you want to call or email the college and let them know about it. If your situation has improved, it is not in your best interest to communicate that with the college. And in fact, most colleges can't take that information into consideration. So you'll just have to wait until the next year, and then the next FAFSA will reflect that increase in pay or that improvement in your financial situation. A couple of ideas on how to reduce expenses. So first, enrollment charges. So can you save on tuition? Can you start at a college that costs less? Where maybe taking those introductory classes can cost you a whole lot less, and then transfer those credits. Can you take classes while you are still in high school? So early college classes or AP classes that will count for college credit and get you some advanced credit at college so that you don't have to take those additional courses. So those are great ways to bring down college costs. Also, think about where you're going to live. If you have the option of living at home, that can save you a bundle. I know for a lot of students graduating from high school, living at home with their parents is not what they want to do right away. But folks, I absolutely see students who end up in really tough positions, taking out lots of student loan debt to make that college dream possible of going to a four-year college and living in the dorm, and all those different activities and spring break programs. And then when they graduate from college, the student loan debt is so big that they have to move back in with their parents. So if you have the opportunity of keeping those costs low your freshman year or your sophomore year, I would encourage you to do that. If it's not an opportunity, if you don't have the option of living at home, consider moving off campus after freshman year. So living in apartments off campus can sometimes be a lot less expensive. Again, it depends on where you are. And certainly getting an apartment in Boston is a whole lot harder than getting an apartment in Bangor. But you want to kind of weigh those options and see what's going to be best for that student. When it comes to meal plans, you have options at most colleges. So you'll be able to reduce meal plans if that's something, if your student isn't eating 3 meals a day, 7 days a week in the cafeteria. Maybe they're eating out on a regular basis. Maybe they sleep in and they miss breakfast on a regular basis. You might want to reduce that meal plan to save yourself some money. You want to consider travel expenses. Can you commute with other friends to get to and from school? Can you share rides? Are there other ways that you can bring down those costs for travel? And health insurance. Most colleges are going to charge you for health insurance. It's going to be on your bill. If you already have health insurance, you want to prove that to the college so they can take that charge off your bill. That works for everything except for Maine Care if you are leaving the state of Maine. In that situation, Maine Care doesn't really go outside of the state of Maine if you are living there for college. So you might want to purchase the health insurance that the college offers if you think it's a good deal, or maybe shop around a little bit and take a look at the marketplace and see if there's some better options out there for you. Books and supplies. The most expensive way to buy a book is a brand new book from the college bookstore. Shop around. So hop online, take a look at Amazon and Barnes and Noble, see if you can buy used books, rent your textbooks. If you need a new computer or any other supplies for college, take a look at where you might be able to use your student discount. So often colleges will have a list of vendors where you can use that discount, and we would highly encourage you to take advantage of that. When I was in college, I went to a local shop to get oil changes that, I got 50% off an oil change because of my student discount, and they had free coffee. So it was a really great time. So, look for those opportunities that you might have. So what do you do if the award that you've been given, the financial aid award you've been given by the college, isn't enough? So it's just not cutting it. So there are a few things that we suggest. Number one is savings. And I know I talked about this a little bit already. It's not too late to save, but also looking at what are all the ways you can save. So work and save over the summer, over the school year. Look for different ways that you can save money to cover those college expenses. Get a second job, students, and look for those opportunities. Right now we pay our babysitters $10 an hour. So a couple of weekends of babysitting can, really make, can buy some of those books for college. So look for those opportunities. Most colleges also offer a tuition payment plan. This is a monthly payment that you'd pay to the college. You set that up prior to bills being due. So if the bill is due August 1st, you want to set up that payment plan prior to that date, and they'll usually split up what you owe them over a course of a few months. So if you are planning to, be in college for the full year, they might split up a payment over 10 months. So you have 10 payments instead of one payment. So if you owe the college $3,000, that would be $300 a month over 10 months versus having to come up with that $3,000 all at once. So those are great ways to kind of look at maybe making some of those payments go without having to take out more student loan debt. That said, there are other financing options out there. We'd encourage students and families to visit theloanforme.com to learn more about those options. That website will walk you through all of the things to consider when taking out student loans. It'll also talk to you about the difference between federal loans, private loans, and Parent Plus loans. So it's worth checking out the Loan for Me to learn more about those additional financing options. When it comes to saving for college, there are 3 ways that families typically save for college. Certainly these are not the only ways, but these ways have some benefits for families. The first is 529 plans. So that would be like our the plan advertised on the inside back cover of the pay publication, Next Gen. So the Next Gen program is Maine's 529 program. It is a way to save for college, and any of the growth in those accounts can be withdrawn and used to pay for qualified higher education expenses without having to pay taxes on that growth. Same thing with the Coverdell education savings accounts. They work very similarly to 529. So again, any growth inside those accounts can be used to pay for college without having to pay taxes on it. So it grows tax-free as long as you're using it for higher education expenses. The big difference between a 529 and a Coverdell is that the 529 has you have ability to save a whole lot more every year. The Coverdell has smaller savings amounts. You can also withdraw from your traditional or Roth IRA for higher education expenses for yourself or for your dependents without paying taxes or penalties on that withdrawal. You will want to talk a little bit to your tax accountant before doing that to make sure that you are doing all the right things for yourself. But another thing I would want you to keep in mind if you are withdrawing from those IRAs is that the next year that withdrawal will show up as income. So when you're filing your FAFSA, it'll reflect that you have some additional income that year. That can hurt a student's financial aid eligibility. So again, having these conversations ahead of time with the tax accountant to see what the implications would be for your family could be to your advantage. We have a couple of education tax credits and deductions to talk about. First, the state tax credit. So you can learn more at maine.gov/revenue. This is a credit for student loan payments. So it's the Educational Opportunity Tax Credit. And when you make qualified payments to your student loans, a portion of those payments may be deductible. So you want to go and learn a little bit more about that program. You can learn more at our website or at maine.gov/revenue. And there are also federal tax credits and deductions to consider. So the American Opportunity Tax Credit, the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit, and the Student Loan Interest Deduction. You can learn more about those and get websites for where to learn more about those inside the pay publication on page 22, or also on our website. Lots of additional resources out there for you. Inside the pay publication on page 23 and 24, there is a junior and senior year planning checklist. We have gathered information from school counselors and students and our own personal experiences in sending our own kiddos to college and put together this great list of things to think about as students move through junior and senior year. So this is a great way to stay on top of all of the parts and pieces. And if you're like me and you like to just check things off as you go to feel like you've accomplished something, lots of little check boxes on these 2-page inside the pay publication. You'll also find lots of resources on our website at famemaine.com, but we'd encourage you to check out the web, talk to your school counselors, talk to the financial aid offices at the colleges that you're applying to. At this point, you can pretty much call any college in the United States and they will answer your financial aid question because they don't know if you're coming to their school or not. But so you can get some great help. But if you want to get regular updates on the financial aid process that are timely based on where your student is in the process or where you are in the process, you want to go to famemaine.com/join and join our mailing list. It's a great way to get additional information. We send about 1 email a month, so we're not going to bombard you with stuff, but we are going to make sure that you are up to date and knowledgeable about all the next steps in the financial aid process. Fame is also partnered with iGrad to offer you access to iGrad's fantastic website. So iGrad offers free financial education where students can complete financial wellness courses, upload their student loans to understand what future monthly payments will look like and also what their repayment options might look like. They also have a really great free scholarship search tool. So that is fame.igrad.com. If you have any questions about financial aid or anything I've spoken about in this presentation, we'd encourage you to give our customer service team a call. They're available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 1-800-228-3734. Or you can send us an email at education@famemaine.com. Thank you so much for your time today. If you would like more information about the topic of financial aid or any of our other financial topics, please visit our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, or check us out on YouTube. We have lots of great videos on our YouTube channel and lots of information to share. Or you can go directly to our website, fame-education.com.